Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to NNClimate22, our online climate conference hosted by Northamptonshire Council. This is our third and final session of the day, and this session will be got a range of speakers who are talking about the theme of the future of our communities and providing local solutions. As with the previous sessions, if you've got questions you would like to direct to any of the speakers as we go, you can email those to nnclimate22@northants.gov.uk, and there will be a Q&A session at the end. On screen you can see the schedule for this session, and our first speaker is Peter Goody from the Greater South East Net Zero Hub, who's going to be talking to us about progressing your net zero project to investment ready. So, Peter, over to you when you are ready.
And good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Peter Goody. I work for the Greater South East Net Zero Hub. And in the next 15 minutes, I hope to explore with you how to get a project, particularly a net zero project, to investment ready. And what a time to be talking about energy and investment, with the autumn statement just been published, just been announced today. Energy bills going up and budgets being squeezed. In fact, there's no better time really to be thinking about this topic, whether you're at home, whether you're in a business or in a community. So hopefully in my presentation, I'll be covering what, in my view, are the key steps to get an investment-ready project. I'll be looking at what is meant by an investable project, and it's not just about the money. The steps I think are worth following to develop an investment pipeline, so a set of projects that are aiming to deliver net zero. And I'll take a shamelessly public sector perspective, but I hope that some of the advice, tips and ideas that I'll share with you in the next 15 minutes can be applied to any energy project in any sector. Before I start, however, I'd like to explain a little bit about what we do at the Net Zero Hub and the sort of activities that we support. So with the next slide, please. We were set up by central government in 2018 to support local authorities, communities and local places about decarbonisation and supporting clean growth. We're one of 5 of the Net Zero Hubs across England, and our main purpose is to grow the pipeline of investable local energy projects across England to aid clean growth and to achieve net zero. What we do as a project resource for the public sector organisations and their partners is to bring forward zero carbon programmes and zero carbon places. We offer a range of support functions, whether we act as a critical friend to an organisation, we're a technical advisor, we broker stakeholder relationships across sectors, we enable finance and funding, and we manage funded programs as well. We also commission and develop research, and we try and disseminate and share that knowledge and best practice so that others can benefit and we can speed up the pace of good quality net zero projects. Next slide, please. So just to give you a feel across the 5 hubs in England, the sort of scale of projects that we are supporting, over £4 billion worth of book value across at least 200 major projects. And if you look at the pie chart there, really it's dominated by power generation, heat projects, and energy efficiency in buildings. So those 3 key areas are really important, both to the public sector and to their communities. But we also look at other wide range of themes, whether it's hydrogen, smart grids, power storage, network flexibility, all of these things that are emerging as issues and opportunities for decarbonisation. And we also work on developing knowledge, things around business delivery models, new ways of financing projects, procurement and purchasing solutions, for example, for domestic retrofitting, and many more. Next slide, please. So to put this whole subject into context, it's really important to understand the sort of trajectory that the UK is following. We have a national statutory target of net zero by 2050 as part of our global commitment to tackling climate change. And fossil fuels were a key part of that total greenhouse gas emission. So we had to focus on energy, and that will continue to be a key aspect of our lives going forward in terms of energy transition and thinking how we can use other sources of energy that are not fossil fuel based. And we've seen recent events really bring that into sharp relief in terms of where we get our energy from. And over the last 15 years, the energy system in the UK has been changing significantly, and we'll see continued change as we move forward over the next 15 years around how we generate power, how we store and use that power, the efficiency of the buildings and the transport that we use, and what fuels that go into producing goods and services within the UK, and how we'll develop new buildings, new homes that are not consuming fossil fuel energy, whether it's gas, oil, or fossil fuel-based electricity. Now, the cost of this transition is significant. It's been estimated by the Climate Change Commission to be in the region of £50 billion per year to 2050. But we need to also think about the benefits of not only about carbon savings, but in terms of jobs growth, in terms of health improvement, in terms of better quality homes, better quality places to work, reducing fuel poverty and the like, which is really important at the moment. Next slide, please. But let's start exploring then what the role of an investable project is, and what is an investable project. And really, our key sort of perceived wisdom, it's around financial return, and that is really important, that we build into projects the understanding that investment is needed in order to make something happen. But that conventional wisdom is increasingly being balanced off by what are called wider benefits or co-benefits. Not only are there potential financial savings or revenue generation to be achieved through investing in energy generation and energy saving, but there are opportunities around stabilizing energy spending within a business or an organization, or producing wider benefits to society, whether it's around sustainable economic growth, health improvement, delivering on public sector, public commitment, for example, or business leadership commitment to be net zero, generating jobs, generating new product and new brands that are more sustainable, but also being credible in terms of our commitments to change and to address climate change. That also is becoming much more important in terms of resilience, whether it's in businesses, whether it's in homes, or whether it's in local communities. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do then is focus on a stepwise approach to thinking around and developing an investment pipeline of projects. And I'd like to start at step 0, right from the basics. Where do you start in terms of getting your thinking right as an organization or somebody working within a space that's trying to develop energy projects, and appreciating that you probably haven't got time or capacity to do one project, let alone a whole pipeline. So what is really important is to understand some of the prerequisites to get your project started on that step. And firstly, know your own organization, whether it's large or small. What is pushing it or pulling it towards net zero? Not knowing that will be a potential barrier to your project and may drown your project at birth. So really thinking around, well, what is pushing your organization or pulling your organization towards net zero? And how can you go with the grain of that with regard to your project? And find out how you can align what your project wants to achieve with what your organization wants to achieve and the way that your organization thinks and acts. And that could shape the nature of your project as well. So key to that could be knowing what your chief exec thinks around net zero, or what your leadership team or what your chief finance officer thinks about. And that could be within a business or within a public sector organization. Secondly, know how big your carbon footprint is. That presumes that you've got good quality data, or any data at all, to be able to measure your energy consumption or your use of fuels and the like. But get a feel for how big that carbon footprint is. And that will be able to shape some of the thinking around what projects to tackle first. And thirdly, do a quick capacity and capability check within your organization as to what resources you have available to get your project moving. Who's going to help you to get this project delivered? Have they got the skills and time? And have you got the skills and time to get your project moving? And can they be available? Those that are going to support you, can they be available when you need them? And who do you need to sponsor your projects to get them through? So those factors are really important to get ready in order to then start thinking about the individual project. Thinking that further then, there may be a case to look outside your organization for support, and who do you approach, and how much will it cost, and when will it be available? And finally, using that information, try and get an overall plan together and think about, what are the big decisions that you need to take in order to get every other decision through your decision-making process within your organisation. Avoid taking individual projects multiple times through the decisions that need to be taken, and trying to get an overall strategy of decision-making in place so that you can move those projects quickly through once you've got them identified. Next slide, please. So step one, starting off. First thing really to do is review your assets, know your land, your buildings, your even nearby assets of other parties around you in the locality. They may become part of the solution as you develop your projects, and particularly where you're looking at power generation, it's all important to understand where the power will go. And data is critical to this. Now, we always look for the best quality data, but any data to start off with to give you an indication of how much a building is using or vehicles are consuming in terms of fuel is really important. And you can use surrogate numbers there, estimates around mileage driven, in order to be able to then convert that into the amount of fuel being used, and then think around that in terms of your amount of carbon that's being emitted. And then think about prioritization. Where are those big opportunities lying within your organization? In order to do that, engage early with others, talk to others within your organization and outside your organization around where they see their biggest uses of energy and what opportunities that they've spotted that they haven't been able to move forward. Power generation projects in particular are really becoming more commonly discussed and moved forward by particularly the public sector, but also the private sector, because of the cost of energy at the moment. And ideally, you want to be using that power on your own building or in your own space in order to be able to maximize the opportunity. However, it's really important to think around, what if I'm not using that power? Where is it going to go, and how much value does it have as part of working up the financial case for that project? And when you have a project idea or two, test out those ideas early with gatekeepers, those who are likely to either support your project or be a potential barrier to your project moving forward. And one of those key gatekeepers, particularly with projects that need power from the local power network, are the network operators. So those distribution network operators that control the cables and the substations are key to your initial discussions around how effective that project will be to be developed. And that will help you, talking to those other parties, to be able to identify whether your project will be able to move forward or not. And my maxim is fail early, learn fast. If you don't invest too much time and you can find out that a project is going to be potentially successful, that's great. But if not, move on to the next project quickly, and don't spend time chasing things that are going to be potentially unrealizable. Next slide, please. Step two, I think identifying your project support early is really, really important. So net zero hubs like ourselves are there to support the public sector. But if you're in other sectors, then look outside to what other networks are you involved in. Are you involved in, for example, chambers of commerce or other networks that may be able to help you? They've got some advice. They may have free advice that could help you. Look at your own supply chain. Your energy company may well have support and advice and information that can help you. Certainly, they've got the data. And getting the data out of them is really important to understand how your energy consumption is and what your opportunities are. Some services you're already paying for, as I've said, through your energy company or through your other suppliers. So take advantage of that. And there may be organizations similar to yourself that you could work with to mutual benefit. So have a chat with similar organizations, but also talk to organizations outside your sector. They may have resources that you can pull on. An example may be a university that has a placement student that you could take advantage of, and they could be able to be trained up and work with you and also help your project move forward. So think around the opportunities for working with others. In the public sector, membership groups like APSI Energy and UK 100 are certainly good to visit. For the business sector, chatting to the local enterprise partnership growth hub could be good, or the local chambers. There may be some services that you'll need to pay for, so be aware of that and think around where you're going to access them from. But some service providers, some suppliers may do that with no upfront cost or without commitment. But be prepared to think around what is the benefit of you working with that organisation. Next slide, please. Moving on to step three. and delivering your project, really try and be priority focused. It may be that you want to do something quick or easy or impactful financially or socially responsible, or maybe even carbon saving. In many respects, it doesn't matter, but try to be clear why this project you want to work on has been chosen first. I've touched on support before. Each project will come with a different suite of needs at different times within the project development. And once you've got one or two projects under your belt, you will have more knowledge and confidence. Plus, some of the startup costs, the development costs for those projects will come down as you'll be able to spread them across future projects. But be careful about overstretching yourself as you add projects. Find a way to build in capacity as you deliver more. Next slide, please. Now, key really is finding the money for these projects to be successful. And arguably, one of the biggest challenges is finding the first 10,000 or 5,000 or even £50 to get a project moving. And a common scenario is we get asked about where can I get a grant from? I don't have a budget for this. And my answer to that common question is, when I'm asked, is there a grant for this, is generally no, because the problem comes that if you design a project around a grant, you may get some unintended consequences, some projects that may be developed that aren't quite suited to your needs or your priorities. So my advice there is really have projects worked up at feasibility and then tailor them to the funding opportunities as they come along. These opportunities don't always come along when you expect them, so be ready for them. And if they do appear and you're not ready for them, then you may have missed an opportunity. So get your feasibility done early and have the information ready so you can look out for funding opportunities. So my maxim there is the project should look for the money, not the other way around. If you design a project to suit a funding pot, chances are it will not deliver your objectives. But have projects worked up and tailor them accordingly. As projects progress, there will be key points when money is needed. Your relationship with your finance director or your chief finance officer or your accountant is really important in this respect, so that they understand your needs, they understand the reasons why these projects are going forward or being considered, and they can see the opportunities and a horizon scan for funding and finance. And they may, dare I say it, have a little bit of money salted away somewhere, but I know revenue budgets are really tight in the public sector if they exist at all. And austerity has had an impact both on businesses and public sector. So think around how you can co-fund the initial stages with others and learn together. Your organization's approach to finance will shape your options. So how risk averse or risk opportunistic is your organization about investment? And so this may need to be a piece of work that needs to be done to lay the ground in terms of different ways of financing projects. Be clear on what stake you want to take in the investment. Do you want to be a developer owner? Do you want to be a hands-off venture partner? Do you want to be really hands-off and just for public sector be a concessionaire, allow a suite of projects to happen in your area and you just provide the opportunity for somebody to use your land or to use some of your services in order to be able to develop the project that suits both your needs and their returns? Or you could be a landlord, for example, looking for energy projects that you could host. So next slide, please. So what I'd like to do in the final two slides is consider some do's and some don'ts from my perspective and from my learning. And I think it's beneficial to think around, well, what have we done already that has worked? Where can I learn elsewhere from my organisation or from my experience? You know, if that's worked, let's try it again and let's see if we can build on that and see what's worked for others, and you can apply that. So talking to other organisations that are doing the same thing as you, both inside your own sector and outside your sector is really, really valuable. Make a long list of potential opportunities and start applying a priority to them. Start off with chances of success. The level of complexity, are they quite easy to deliver? Are they early projects can be delivered quickly? But do your due diligence. As I say, fail early and learn fast. Don't invest a lot of time and money in things that could and easily be seen to fail because of being able to not get a network connection or for some other reason like that. Engage early with stakeholders, supporters and gatekeepers, those who are going to be able to shout about your project and support you through the decision-making process, and arguably those that are going to be potentially blocking your project. Try and find out why and try and help the project move forward by looking at opportunities for working for mutual benefit. Be clear what messages the project is going to be telling. So what is the story behind your project? How can that be translated to those that are not wedded to net zero and helps them move their own agendas forward? But be opportunistic. And finally, do something rather than stay where you are and not move forward. Something is better than nothing. So it will help. And don'ts. Next slide. Thank you. Don't overcomplicate the review process. Time is precious and money is scarce. Quickly to the first 2 or 3 projects you want to take forward. Arguably, don't wait for the funding round. This could both delay your project and also make it difficult for you to deliver on your own objectives. Don't expect all the information to be available and accessible. We expect everything to be available in terms of data and the like, but it doesn't always happen in the real world. You have to work with what you've got and make a best endeavours approach to delivering a project. But don't lose focus on your strategic aims. There are sometimes, dare I say, deflecting thoughts or agendas that could take you off course, but try and stick to your strategic aims. And finally, don't do nothing. As I say, try and move forward on your first project. So with that, I hope there's been something in there for everyone. Next slide, please. If you want to contact the Greater South East Net Zero Hub, please do so through our info app or drop me a line via Northamptonshire Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter, for taking us through that. I thought that was a really insightful presentation that had so much useful information in there. Some of the feedback I've got from groups and organisations over the past year or so is just not being sure really where to start in terms of looking at how they're approaching tackling climate change and being more sustainable. So having that sort of information available and available on YouTube for people to come back to, I think is really, really useful. So thank you very much for that. Going to move on to our second speaker for this afternoon's session, which is Victoria Blake from the University of Northampton. And Victoria is going to talk to us about the challenges and opportunities of environmental sustainability. So over to you, Victoria. I think Victoria's perhaps just having a slight technical issue there. And I'm assuming it's not my end that is not keeping up.
No, I don't think so. I think we seem to have lost Victoria from connection. So perhaps we ought to go to Sarah if Sarah's. Oh, she can't unmute, so it's going to rejoin. So apologies, viewers. We'll just sort this technical glitch out, and we'll start as soon as possible.
And just whilst we're sorting that, quick reminder that you can email in questions if you've got a need for the speakers as we go to NNClimate22 at northants.gov.uk. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end to go through that.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. Yeah, I was saying that host wouldn't allow me to unmute, but I'm glad you can hear me now. Fantastic. Thank you. So I am Victoria Blake, the Environment and Sustainability Manager here at the University of Northampton. I can resonate with some of the points that Peter's just raised in his presentation from some of the projects that we've put forward. So I'm just going to take you through what the university strategy is, some projects that we've put in place, and then just finish up with some opportunities going forward. So next slide, please. Okay, so we have 3 overarching strategic goals here at UON. One of those is around being a net zero carbon university, which we have split into 2 main aspects. One, which is to be net zero in our scope 1 and 2 emissions. So by 1 and 2, I'm referring to the energy consumptions, that's electricity, natural gas, the biomass that we consume, and any fleet vehicles that we run. And then secondly is our net zero carbon in scope 3 emissions by 2050. Now, scope 3 are all other emissions associated with activities of the university. So here we're talking about anything that we procure and buy in, anything that we waste. So where does that go? Is it recycled? Does it go to landfill? Our water consumption, so how much we're using, we can reduce that down, and any treatment associated with it. So scope 3 emissions are quite broad, and there are a number of challenges associated with measuring those. So we'll be looking at calculating those over the next 12 months, and then looking at how we can reduce those down by 2050. Secondly, we've got conserve and enhance biodiversity. So at Waterside, we are fortunate that we're surrounded by a green area, and we also have the River Nen running across campus as well, so adjacent to that. So that gives us opportunities not only to enhance the biodiversity of the site, but it also gives us opportunities to work with students, the local community and projects to understand the benefits that biodiversity and ecology has on well-being, as well as how you can go around enhancing that. And then thirdly is all around education for sustainability. So that covers kind of 3 main areas. First of all, we want to ensure that all our staff and students have some kind of basic carbon literacy training. So this just gives us equips us with the tools and the understanding of how to combat against climate change. Secondly, it's how we review our courses, the various aspects within each course that links to sustainable development. So when we talk about sustainable development, we're not just talking about climate change here, we're talking about quality of education, we're talking about zero poverty, as well as around travel aspects and enhancing around community and as well as climate change. And then thirdly, it's all about how do we ensure that sustainability becomes like a foundation of our research and innovation. And that's a more challenging one for us at the moment. So we've got lots of discussion underway around that particular goal. Next slide, please. So as an institution, we have a number of tools available to us that can support us in our journey really into becoming either net zero, how we want to ensure that we can engage with education for sustainable development, and how we can really build relationships with local communities and also use independent third parties to give some credibility to the claims that we're making and the actions and the outputs that we have associated with it. So I'll just draw your attention to, we declared that we'll be a net zero carbon university in February 2021. As part of that pledge, we signed up to something called the Sustainable Development Accord, Official Race to Zero, and the One Planet Project. Now, what these 3 different types of organizations do is really hold us to account. So if we say we're going to be net zero, they want us to say how we're going to do that. So we must have a plan, we must publish that plan, and we must publish the progress against that plan. So these are 3 very key aspects in order for us to deliver and make good on our claims. Another 2 there are more kind of business based. So first of all, we've got the Good Business Charter, which we signed up to earlier this year. So what that does is it looks at not just our kind of academic approaches to what we're doing, but also our business aspects. So are we a real living wage employer? Do we pay invoices within a certain time? Do we have an ethical supply chain policy? So there's kind of 10 key criteria with which that we have to measure ourselves against and demonstrate. So that's something that we've achieved this year, and we're working with the Good Business Charter and other businesses across West and North Northamptonshire on how we can further strengthen that certification. And also there's Investors in Environment. So the Investors in Environment is an accreditation scheme which has kind of a clear framework with which we assess ourselves against. So, for example, do we have very clear waste plans? Do we have clear travel plans? Do we have clear carbon targets? There's a whole range of different aspects that we look at, and we set targets against those and then break that down into kind of a yearly set of actions that we were then measured and assessed against. So Invested Environment, we won an award in 2021 for our Up for the Cup project, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later on in the presentation. And we've also been shortlisted recently for some of our activities relating to working with small and medium-sized enterprises and doing some environmental assessments, and also some additional work that we've done within our catering services to ensure that they are more sustainable. Next slide, please. So going on, it's kind of what is a zero carbon university? So these are 4 areas that I've highlighted. So first of all, we're looking at zero avoidable waste and no single-use plastics. So we have a project underway at the moment where we are assessing all the single-use plastics that are in use across the university. We started with our catering outlet, and since then we've reduced all of our plastics in terms of bottled water. So we're trialling the use of canned water, alternative packaging, and also looking at the solution of removing selling water across site and just using the various water fountains that we have available. Procurement. So again, this is when we're talking about, we're working with procurement to really understand what it is that we're purchasing, where we're purchasing it from. Does it meet our own sustainability credentials? Are we able to accurately measure the carbon footprint associated with the goods and services that we purchase? And once we have all of that information, we can then set targets and benchmarking about how we're going to reduce those. Well, you talked a little bit about energy. So Waterside Campus, when it was built both for a low embodied impact and a low operational impact. So operational impact, we have our biomass boiler. So that reduces the need to use natural gas to heat our campus. And we also had very low impact products that were used in the build itself, as well as the low energy consumption of the building. We have some new technologies around LED lighting. We have great building management systems that are in place. So having Waterside really gave us a head start on reducing those scope 1 and 2 emissions. We're now at the point where we are assessing what happens next. What do we do when the biomass boiler and those gas boilers come to the end of their life? How can we change behavioural behaviour of staff and students when we're there on campus? So we have a number of schemes that we've started to have up and running to really look at changing behaviour, because that's quite key as well. So it's not just about mechanical interventions that we can put in place. So we know that we can reduce temperature of the buildings, and that we can switch lights off automatically when we come out of rooms. But it's all about how we as users can also think about how we interact with those buildings. And then again around travel. So we have kind of 2 aspects to travel. One, which is traveling to campus itself. So we have our Uno bus service, which we look at reducing the use of car to site. And we also promote our cycle to work scheme. We have a cycle hire scheme for students. We've signed up and worked quite closely with the Voice Scooter initiative when that came along. So we try to promote alternative ways of coming onto site rather than just using your car. And just to finish up there in terms of climate conscious travel. So again, this is kind of 2 aspects, one which is around business travel. So when we're going to go to a conference, are we looking at using, well, first of all, the question is, do we need to go to a conference? Is it online such as this one? So therefore we are not using any mode of transport, so therefore we are reducing our carbon emissions straight off. If we do have to travel, can we use a train? Can we use a bus? If we have to use a car, can we car share? So it's kind of really looking at your travel hierarchy before you decide to set off on any kind of business travel. And then we also have a new aspect that we're starting to work with in terms of our faculties, which is around field trips. So a number of our courses will have field trips. They will have placement students. So again, it's that how can we work with them to demonstrate that they've considered the impact of the travel that's going to be happening or associated with that particular activity, and then is there any mitigating that we can do? So can we say that we decided to use a train travel, or we decided that we were going to do a field trip outside of the UK, but we decided to do that in Europe instead of further afield. So this is something that we're just working on at the moment with our various faculties. Next slide, please. And our second pillar here is all around conserving and enhancing biodiversity. We've talked a lot about biodiversity, enhancing it today. My colleague Dr. Janet Jackson was on earlier on today. So we have finalised, we've put together what we call our management plan for biodiversity. And what this is really about is understanding what are the key native species that we have across the university. We need to demonstrate and put in place a number of plans to ensure that we can promote and enhance those particular flora and fauna that we have on site. But as mentioned earlier, it's also an opportunity to educate. So not just our staff and students, but the local community in the role that biodiversity does play within climate change, and also within our own health and well-being, so we can promote the use of these spaces. And again, because Waterside is so very open and so close to the town centre, it is welcoming, so others from outside of the university can attend as well. I mentioned Project Awesome there, so that's something else that Janet heads up. And I think one of the biggest projects that that we've come out of recently in terms of working with students is around our hedgehog-friendly campus. So we are now going for a gold award this year. We are an official release site across Northampton for hedgehogs, and we find that projects like this are a really good way to engage students. Next slide, please. Here, I just wanted to highlight some of the activities and linking to the Department for Education Strategy for Sustainability and Climate Change. So again, this was launched earlier in the year, and the university, along with 4 other universities, was selected to pilot the concept of a nature park and a climate leader award. So the purpose of a nature park is all of the education estates across the UK play a part in enhancing biodiversity, but also gives an opportunity to educate all school years. So that's from early childhood service years up until higher education. So we went along and highlighted that we have these green spaces, the different types of flora and fauna that we have on site, and the fact that we are so close to the River Nene. Following on from that, we're also a change maker campus. So what that's all about is we have a very structured framework to how we can assess projects that children come up with to demonstrate that they can see that there is a potential issue that they want to look at. They want some support on how they can frame that into a project, potentially how that can be funded, what the outputs of it is there. So we're best placed to be able to support these projects. So that should be launching and sometime the end of this year. So we will be piloting the nature parks and the Climate Leaders Award. Next slide, please. So this is just really giving a bit more detail about our education for sustainable development. So this project is just really starting. We have started to map all of our courses against the Sustainable Development Goals. So the Sustainable Development Goals are 17 goals that has been agreed by the United Nations that should we meet all of those, then we will achieve sustainable development. So as mentioned, this covers things from zero hunger, it comes health and well-being, quality of education, partnership for the goals. So we've started to map across each one of our degree courses to see which one of the goals that they support and they achieve, and then where there are any gaps. So that's a project that's ongoing at the minute. One that's running parallel to that is how we can link or make interdisciplinary modules. So it's very specific to that particular course. So if you take health and well-being, so if we take nursing and paramedics or midwifery, we have close links with Northampton General Hospital, who are able to come in and give presentations on sustainable midwifery practices, for example. So this is a project that we started last year and will be going on for the next 12 months. And my final slide, please. So just to finish up really on some opportunities and projects that we've been working through. So the university really does offer the opportunity around research and innovation and how we can measure carbon impacts. We're also assessing and looking at potential carbon offsetting. So is that something that we want to do? Is that something that business should be doing? If we are going to offset, what kind of parameters should we put in place in criteria? So which of your carbon emissions should you be offsetting? What kind of scheme should be offsetting against, because you want to make sure that they're robust. I mentioned earlier that we've been working with a number of small and medium-sized enterprises across North Northants and West Northants, giving some very high-level assessments. This is small businesses that don't quite know where to start, or they have some ideas and they want to have a little bit more information from us on how they would carry out an assessment, or how they can reduce their carbon, or how they can reduce their energy consumption, and also any opportunities for funding to support on projects that they want to put in place. We do an awful lot of collaboration with local communities and businesses, and we do that through a number of events. So we've had our COP26 event last year, which was very successful. We'll look at doing events in the future. And then there I've got our Northamptonshire Sustainability Forum. So this is where, again, this is business-based. So a number of businesses, we all come together and we just share either best practice, or if there are challenges that we're facing and we're not entirely sure how to go about fixing those, or if there's ways that we can work together. So that's what the Sustainability Forums there is about. And I just want to tie that up for the CUP project. So that was a very successful community project that was run following some funding that we won from Hubbub. So we worked with Delapre, the train station, the Northampton General Hospital. We also had the Grosvenor Centre on board. So this is where, as a consortium, we were wanting to recycle 160,000 coffee cups. So that was our target. So at the moment we're at 80,000 coffee cups for recycling across that. But that's just been a great project that we've worked together with lots of different types of businesses, and how we can best educate on recycling, and how we've been able to pull in business partners as well as academics and students all into one big project. So yeah, that's from me. Thank you. And apologies for the technical issues earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for going through that. It was really great to hear about the work that the university is doing, and all the different levels that flows down into in terms of looking at their impact on the environment. And actually it really ties into what we heard from Peter earlier in terms of looking at it in the round. So I'm going to move on to the third speaker, which is Sarah Parr from West Northamptonshire Council, who's going to talk to us about RAIN, which is an innovative flood resilience project. So over to you, Sarah.
Hello, I'm Sarah Parr, and I'm here to talk to you about an innovation project called RAIN that I'm working on, which looks to build flood resilience in Harpersbrook and the Wattenbrook. The most devastating effect climate change will have on our neighbourhoods first. The first thing we'll notice is flooding. The thing that will come into our lives and affect the homes we live in is flooding. The impacts are overwhelming, like a fire or a robbery. You feel something unwelcome and uninvited has pushed itself into your home, your safe place, causing sometimes irreversible damage. Recovering from flooding and the physical effects it has on your home is really slow. Recovering mentally, sometimes leaving a person with PTSD, is really slow. I'm sorry that's so ominous, but it needs to be said if we are going to seriously talk about climate change, and that is why we're here. I'm not going to talk about statistics or go into any more detail about the science of how climate change increases flooding here or across the planet. I'm going to talk to you about the RAIN project. It's a very local project, and I'm seriously hoping some of you out there are in the Harpersbrook catchment and are listening or watching today, because it's there where this work's going to take place. There are 25 funded projects just starting delivery across England right now, all different, but all aiming to increase flood resilience in their local communities. RAIN is the Northamptonshire one. Resilience is about strength. It's about dealing with something. It is about having the right tools to tackle something. It's about empowerment. And it is this idea of environmental and community resilience that's where the innovation programme came from. It's managed by the Environment Agency and funded by DEFRA, and climate change is at the very heart of it. Just now to quote from the Environment Agency, from their website about these projects, 25 local projects demonstrating how practical, innovative actions can improve resilience to flooding in a changing climate. Working locally, each project will help communities to become more resilient to the effects of flooding and climate change. Local authorities, together with other risk management authorities, partners and communities, will develop innovative solutions to flood and coastal resilience in communities across England. Now that may all sound still a bit too vague. You might be thinking, what does that even mean? So let me talk about some specifics, some things we will be actually doing and delivering in RAIN. By the way, RAIN stands for Resilience and Innovation Northamptonshire. And just that alone, coming up with a name, made us think in the team about what that word RAIN actually means to people, as it means very, very different things to different people. Some would see growth, life. Some see a terrible inconvenience. But for people who have been flooded, it means something very different. It means the same thing. It means cost, loss, heartbreak, despair. The RAIN project aims to change those feelings, to build confidence, to reduce fear, to empower, to show people in Northamptonshire who have experienced flooding that something is going to be put in place, whether that is changing the landscape to catch the rain before it goes into those communities, whether it's protecting properties to reduce the effects of flooding, or whether it's to improve recoverability, whether it's just simply listening and talking and confronting the issues with those communities and what caused the flooding. People are at the very centre of the RAIN project, and it happens when we can't just build a wall to sort out flood issues. The RAIN project happens when all those things are put together. So it's a holistic approach to resilience, and it's projects, and this and projects like it happen when people are allowed to act on innovation. A large part of RAIN is the creation of natural flood measures, which Tristan earlier spoke to you in session 2 about. Natural flood measures is working on areas up catchment of communities to slow the flow of water down before it reaches them. I have some very special friends to talk about this today with you. They will explain it far better and far more beautifully than I can. So firstly, if we could have the first clip, this is Russell.
Hi, I'm Russell. I'd love to show you how floodwater in rivers can be reduced by slowing some of the flow of water on land. Some of the methods used can benefit farms like this too. Compacted soil doesn't soak up water, so subsoiling or soil aeration loosens it all up. It allows the water to penetrate deep into the soil, and it allows the crops to stretch out their roots and draw up more nutrients. This reduces the need for expensive fertilisers, which can wash into rivers, causing big problems in the rivers and the seas. This is a really big win in my book. There are other great methods for making valuable farm infrastructure less likely to be damaged during storms too. Reinforced dry stone walls help collect and then spread out water across a wider area. This slows it down and helps it to drain away into the soil. Whiskey barrel structures like these act in a similar way, catching and slowing the water, storing it for a short while, and redirecting it away from problem areas. My personal favourite, kested hedges, which are a hedge on top of an earth bank. These are built across hill slopes to slow down stormwater as it rushes down the hills. This protects the communities below. They also provide food and protection for wildlife and shelter for livestock. All of these methods improve the water quality and the soil quality by keeping the topsoil on the land and not in the river. Thanks a lot. Cheers for watching.
Well, he knows his stuff. Natural flood resilience is about lots of other benefits too. By recreating flood resilience the way nature did and still does, there are so many other added benefits of this, including improved water quality and increased biodiversity. This is explained particularly well by a fish called Finn. Could I have my next clip, please?
How do? Finn here. Natural rivers like mine are one of the jewels of the British countryside and have inspired artists and writers for generations. I'm told the Wind in the Willows is a good example, but not all our rivers are as natural as they once were. Rivers have been altered for many reasons as modern life has developed. They've accommodated roads and bridges, been squeezed and straightened through towns and even in the countryside to increase productive agricultural land, diverted to power things like cotton mills, and dammed in reservoirs for drinking water and hydropower. But it'll often have a lot less space for water because it's much shorter than a meandering river. This means communities downstream might get more water than they can cope with. A bridge may not have enough room for the amount of water trying to get through, which can cause flooding. Oh, the water will also be moving quicker than a natural river would, and it contains lots of mud and rocks and other materials, especially when it floods. In natural meandering rivers, the bends act like brakes, allowing some of the mud and rocks to stop moving. This means that when the water gets to the villages or towns, blockages like this are much less likely to happen. People have been working to return stretches of our rivers back to their natural state by removing old and often dangerous weirs, which are no longer needed. These restored rivers allow more space and time for water to move, helping communities at risk of flooding. Species such as salmon and trout can migrate naturally again. Morning! Morning! And the rejuvenated riverbanks provide a sanctuary for wildlife, making us all very happy. Thank you very much.
Okay, so those two clips were created by the Environment Agency and the Wildlife Trust. The ideas came from one of the country's leads in natural flood measures, David Kennedy. If you'd like to see more of them, they're all as beautiful. I really struggled to choose which ones to show you. They're on the Cumbria Wildlife Trust website if you go to their Slow the Flow section. We'll be using those videos and others to engage with schools and communities in the Harpers Brook catchment. If you live in the Harpers Brook catchment, you're a community group or a school, please get in touch. We would love to come and talk to you, show you our other engagement materials, and let you explain further our plans and see how we can get people involved, because we really do want you to get involved. All those changes we hope to make through RAIN, those conversations, helping the landscape to slow down the water coming into the communities, that passing on of knowledge, building relationships, bringing people together, all systematically will be seeds in our aim to making communities more resilient. We're at the beginning of something. Something Pathfinder projects have started. We'll be present for about 5 years planting all these seeds, but it can't just stop there. These efforts and this investment needs to carry on. It's not just a legacy, it needs to be the norm now. Innovation must no longer be exceptional. It needs to be the norm. People must be allowed to trial, to make mistakes, to not always completely be outcome focused, to things get sorted on the way to something else. That organic process, that natural process is where change is. It's along the way, and that is where RAIN and innovation are. They are leading somewhere. Another part of this project, which I want to shout about, is partnership working. The whole project is based on this. Putting talented people together with other talented people with different skills and backgrounds is going to be one of the things that helps us tackle this. On a much broader note, partnership working has to be the absolute norm in tackling climate change, preparing residents and communities for this change in climate. With regards to flooding in particular, we need more people in this industry. There are inspiring and talented people in this industry ready to inspire you. They inspire me, but we need more. So I think what I'm saying is please consider work in this area. You'll never be out of work. The industry will naturally get bigger, unfortunately. It does feel worthwhile. You've got choices from working on the engineering side or the science of it. Our very smart hydraulic modelers on the project, HR Wallingford, or you might be more inspired by the warmth of Flood Mary, another partner we have working with us, who is a property flood resilience activist who's been flooded numerous times, or the beautiful souls who work on the natural side of resilience, who realise the only way through this will be people finally accepting the environment is not separate from us. It is us. We are part of its process. And whereas it is trying to do its thing to heal, we need to meet it halfway. We need to fall head over heels back in love with the landscape, because that's where the answers are. If the world is on fire, we are too, and that sits heavy with me. But having work that enables me to spend my time on this fight, on this mission, to either fight climate change or help those and the landscapes affected by climate change, it makes it easier and a lighter load. So if you have an interest in the world and what is happening to it, and you are in a place where you can decide on an industry to be part of, maybe choose something green, something where you can either work to tackle climate chaos or something where you can help those affected by it. There is no stronger pull in motivation than to be working in industries that acknowledge and help this in the planet's current catastrophe. Everything we do needs to, if it moves us forward, it needs to be related to this crisis. If it isn't related to this mission, then it probably isn't progress. On a completely different note again, so I keep jumping about, but I feel like I've got a lot to say. If you experience flooding, if you're out in your car or if it's at home, please don't drive through it. Don't get in the water at any point. It's really dangerous, and that's where people lose their lives when it comes to flooding, and that's not what we want to see. We want to keep everyone safe. So stay safe, everyone. And that's me, ran out of time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for going through that with us. It's a very important project locally, and I know you've had lots of conversations with the people who've unfortunately been affected by flooding, and so providing that support and really innovative solutions is so valuable for our community, and I hope the project goes really well and benefits everybody locally. So thank you. Going to move to our last speakers for this session, who I'm really grateful for getting involved with this, as I was really keen that we had some involvement from a school. So we're going to hear from Elizabeth Jones and Jenny Hamilton from Friars Academy in Wellingborough, and very pleased to hand over.
Hello. So hi, I'm very sorry, it's just me, Jenny Hamilton. Liz couldn't be here, unfortunately. Being in a school, we often have problems with cover situations and such like. So she got taken away on. Well, we couldn't have her here because she needed to teach. So unfortunately, it's just me. I can't say how happy I am to be here, and I'm so inspired listening to all these different speakers. I was starting to wonder where I fitted in, to be honest, but I'm very, very grateful to Sarah Parr, who kind of gave me that little in when she said the environment is us and we are the environment, and that really is very much where we come from here at Friars. The idea that we are nature and nature is us, and we're a part of nature, and that's very much where we're coming from, but we're very much at the beginning of our journey here. We have started our journey sort of in the last sort of year or so, and so what you're going to see here is the baby steps that we're taking, and what we've done, and then hear about what we hope to do. So next slide please. Thank you. So like a lot of schools, we started by making sort of links with the Woodland Trust. We were very, very interested and are very interested in increasing biodiversity in our school. So we were particularly interested in trees for pollinators. We got into contact with the Woodland Trust and planted a lot of blossoming hedgerow plants, so blackthorn. Sorry, I'm very nervous not having Liz here, so I'm very sorry about that. All those sorts of things that I can't think of right now because I'm very nervous. But each class planted a tree. It gave us a real sense of ownership, belonging, nature connectedness, and that's really what we're striving for here at Friars. So National Tree Week coming up, we all planted a tree in class. We're all planting a tree in class, and our students come out, they plant trees. We've put them all along our boundaries, all along our hedges, and we have made sure that each student knows where their tree is, they take care of it. A lot of them were very sad that some of them didn't make it down to the water table before we had the drought, so we've ordered some new ones and we're replanting, but we're hoping that we'll have a lot of blossoming trees for our bees and such like. So yeah, fingers crossed we'll have a lot of new life, because we were finding that actually we were quite a nature deprived school. Prior to that, we didn't have a lot of green within our boundary, a lot outside. We're very lucky for that, but not necessarily within, so we're trying to fix that. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what you can see here is our deadhead. It takes a little bit of explaining. I probably should have put it before the other slide, but what this little bit here is our forest school, for what it is. So we, during lockdown, couldn't go off site to have our forest school. So behind what you can see there, which is our deadhead, is our forest school. But we are a very small school. We have 147 students on roll, and a lot of those students, so we're a school for students with special educational needs, and a lot of our students have difficulties such as autism. And what we were finding was that we take them into the corner of the school field to do forest school, and they couldn't differentiate between forest school and playtime and the rest of the school field. And we needed to provide some form of boundary between forest school and the school field so that they understood. And it was in a conversation with my year 11 class, who I taught English to, where we were sort of having this discussion, and we were discussing, what we should do about it, because they weren't particularly engaged in English. And I mentioned that I'd been putting up dead hedges at the weekend at my local pocket park, and they said, well, what are they? And we talked about it, and they said that sounded like a good idea. And so as a project, they put together this dead hedge idea. They presented to the head teacher. They risk assessed the activities, they came up with the rationale, they used the tools to kind of put it all together. They soared every single one of the, but they went and sourced the hazel, they coppiced it themselves, they sawed it all themselves, they malleted them all in, they did the risk assessments, they did it all themselves and put it all in, which is why it looks a bit rustic, but we're very proud of it. They also put together some information for our young people to explain why it's valuable to have. What we also like about it, obviously, is it creates a space for our garden waste, but one of the young people that helped put it together, he said, you know what, miss, when I have my own house, if I ever need to put up a fence, I'm not going to pay money to do it. I'm just going to put up a dead hedge. And I just thought that was absolutely brilliant. He said, and that way I'll get hedgehogs. That way there'll be somewhere for the mice to live, you know, and it was just this really kind of lovely idea of them thinking about those real life applications. You can probably see as well some really sorry looking on the left hand side, some bits of willow that have been stuck in the ground because the students decided they wanted a willow arch, and so we've put one in to see if it works. It's very much about what the students want here. It's very much our students are the centre of everything we do, and it's about our students having a love for and a connection with nature, and making sure that that we're building that and we're encouraging that, so that when they come out of school and when they go into the world, they have that love and they have that connection, and it matters to them because it's important for the next generation. Next slide, please. Thank you. Also, this was something else. This is our stumpery. So this is under Liz's science classroom window. It was very sorry. There was it was not a lot there actually, a bit of gravel and a shrub and not a lot else there. It wasn't looking very nice, and we talked about what we should do with it. And I had some stumps at home, and my class at the time were very interested in insects. So we spoke about the idea of putting in a stumpery. And so again, it was a student project. The students dug it, the students put it in. And at the moment it's looking a bit sparse, but we've got some things to put into it. And so we're hoping that it will increase again the biodiversity around the site. We're hoping that we might get some lesser stag beetles, because obviously you don't get stag beetles around here. But yeah, and trellises and climbing plants, bird feeders. We're hoping by increasing insect population will increase bird population as well. And just generally thinking about increasing biodiversity around the site in different ways and different means. And again, it's just about the students and making it nicer for them. There's a small place where the students can sit just out of the shot as well, which has a place for a wheelchair as well, which is really nice for them to sit and play cards and what have you. So that's quite nice. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so this is Forest School. This is sort of my baby. I trained as a Forest School lead in lockdown year. And so it was quite tricky to begin with because we couldn't go off site because it was locked down. So I had to, if you can't take Mohammed to the mountain, to bring the mountain to Mohammed. So bizarrely, we had no trees at our forest school, and when it was very, very wet, there was no way of putting up tarpaulins to keep things dry. So we found some 8-foot fence posts, and one of my year 11 students who wasn't engaging particularly well in English lessons in particular, put the fence posts in for me in one particular lesson when he was needing to, you know, get that sort of aggression out. And so those fence posts are in there. We've planted a tree, of course, against each one. So hopefully we'll have a small copse that we can use. Students obviously use fire down there. We've got a small mud kitchen, hammock. We've also got small park play down there. There's a small hide that we can sit in and watch the birds. It also can be used as an educational space, and so on. We're really very interested in using it as a sort of a sanctuary and a way of having our students connect with nature. And we're very aware that a lot of our students don't have that connection. A lot of our students won't go outside once they get home. A lot of our students will spend a lot of time in their bedrooms or gaming, and perhaps don't have the opportunities to go outside, and perhaps don't connect with nature ordinarily. And so that's kind of something that they do. The forest school display is something that I have in my classroom, which we cover in all sorts of things that we might find when we're out and about. There's a fox skull on there. There's big pine cones. There's a set of binoculars that students can just come in and grab if they see anything, if the kite's up above or whatever, and anything that they find that they're interested in, or if they've done something they're proud of, they can go up there. Birds' nests, those sorts of things tend to sort of get put on there, so that it harbours that interest in nature and makes children excited about it. Next slide, please. So this is trying to get our young people excited about the nature that we do have. So we bought some motion sensor cameras, and we're really surprised about actually the amount of nature we do have on our site. There's a now condemned long jump pit, which we started looking for animal prints, and so we found badger and fox prints, and we put our cameras up, and we have both badgers and foxes that visit our school field. We also have rabbits. I believe that's a rat as well, but obviously squirrels. We have green woodpeckers. We have all sorts of other birds. We have a pair of kite and a pair of buzzard that we believe are probably nesting nearby. Oh, this is hi. Hi everyone. And so yes, so we've been trying to get our young people involved by use of technology and getting them invested in what is actually there already, but by increasing biodiversity and by encouraging more nature, and by having the dead hedge there and increasing more small mammal population, we're hoping small larger predators as well. Next slide, please. So Autumn Watch. So Autumn Watch was last Thursday, and the students are still talking about it. We've already planned Spring Watch. Yes. This was an absolute genius stroke, and the students absolutely loved it. So we stayed late on Thursday night, and we watched the animals, watched nature. I mean, we didn't, because they didn't seem to get the memo. I think we saw a rabbit and a squirrel. Yeah. But we did toast marshmallows on the fire, and we ate s'mores, and we chatted, and we sang some campfire songs, and students were outside in nature and were really, really excited when they thought they might see, or when they thought that one of the cones was actually a hedgehog. That was a very, very big thing. It wasn't, but that didn't matter, because they were very excited by the whole thing anyway. So we've got a Spring Watch already in the diary, and just getting, like I said, it's all about with our students, particularly because of the types of students we have. It's just about making sure that they are at the centre of everything we do, and that we're just making sure that they are interested and engaged with nature, so that it matters to them, so that then they want to care about it, and care about the environment. Next slide, please. So that brings us on to this waste and recycling. So we have snack time at school, and that used to generate a lot of waste. Now every classroom has a compost caddy, And we have recycling bins made out of old pallets, and all of the food waste and blue paper towels, and much of the food waste from the cooking room and from our fryery, which is our kitchen, is composted. We would love to be able to recycle cooked waste like in other councils, but there doesn't seem to be that facility at the moment, just putting that out there. But all classrooms have recycle, and we have a programme for recycling hard to recycle stuff, so batteries, plastic bags, stuff like that, crisp packets.
And we've formed a partnership with a local group to take those up there, so that's also getting our students out into the wider community to sort of hopefully engage with other people as well.
I think we have to move on quite quickly, but I think we're almost at the end anyway. Next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, gardening is part of the curriculum. So we use every available space in our school so we garden, and we also have an allotment. And so that will be where a lot of our compost goes.
And a lot of the food that we produce from the gardening also gets used within our snack time. So we're trying to be sustainable as far as that goes. So we make crumbles and from the rhubarb, and we grow potatoes and carrots, and we grow some flowers, nice things like that.
We definitely need to talk to the University of
Okay.
Yes, okay, next slide, please. And yes, so we recently had a big refit, and so part of that was LED lighting and LED monitors. Certain lights that went in never got that got taken out, never got replaced, and so on.
And there was a bit of an audit about how much light we actually needed within the school at certain times. And like most schools, I think we were overlit, and now we are just about right in the places that we need it. Yeah. Rather than just having it on because they've always been there.
So we're certainly, like I say, at the baby stages, but we're very much led by what our students tell us they want and need. And so there we go. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to both of you for going through that presentation. It was really great to hear what you're doing as a school. And it's clear you're doing so much, which is brilliant. And I remember that school for me was somewhere that was really important in terms of learning about the challenges that the planet and the environment faced, but also what we could do. And I'm sure it inspired many of my peers as well. So the work you're doing will no doubt be doing the same. And thank you so much for giving up your time today to talk to us. That does conclude all our speakers for this third session of our climate conference. Just to reiterate, a massive thank you to you all for your talks there. They were all really thought-provoking and intriguing, and we're going to go to some questions now, and for that I'm going to hand over to George Candler, who's our Executive Director of Place and Economy.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Good afternoon, everyone. For those that haven't watched the first two sessions, I'm George Candler, Exec Director of Place and Economy here at Northamptonshire Council, and I will be posing a few questions to the speakers that you've heard from this afternoon. Could I ask the speakers to put their cameras on, just so that we can all see them, and you can see them and hear them? It looks like Sarah's got Russell on her lap. All right. Okay, so what's happened is we've had a few questions come in as part of this session, and as I've mentioned in the first two sessions, we won't be able to cover all of them. So those that we will respond to them, and we'll put both the question and the answer up on the webpage for this Climate 22 event on the Northamptonshire website. So we will answer all of those questions, but can only cover a few in the session that we've got at the moment. So without further ado, I'm going to go to Peter first, if I may. Peter, where have you seen the greatest success applying your do's and don'ts? Has that been mainly around sort of capital projects or community projects? Where have you seen the greatest success so far?
I think there's a reality to that, that probably those organisations that have already got some capacity crack on. The real struggle for communities is the fact that they're really keen individuals, but they haven't got all of the support networks and some of the knowledge, and also some of the money and some of the structures to be able to do that. So I think in reality, we've seen larger institutions who have got the sort of teams set up to go forward on that. But it's really important that potentially those could be the catalyst and support to those organisations that haven't got that capacity. So we have seen good collaborations being built between larger organisations and smaller ones, maybe using their supply chain, but also, for example, local authorities working with community groups and supporting them. And I've attended a few rooms, cold windswept community halls in my time, and I know that the value of a little bit of input and a little bit of money can go a long way with the community group, because there's a lot of inbuilt resilience and dynamism within local communities that we just need to unlock. And I think there could be a lot of opportunity there if we just are able to support them a little bit more, whether that's with a little bit of time, a little bit of money, and giving a pathway to their projects.
Great. No, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it is just that little bit of support that kickstarts an initiative or a scheme, isn't it, into action. Okay, thanks for that, Peter. So moving on to the next question. So this one's for yourself, Victoria. So with such a diverse community of students and staff from across probably all of the world, not just the UK, does this present any cultural challenges in developing that wider sustainability agenda on campus?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've been discussing this recently, actually. So when we put together our strategy, we tend to think of climate change and sustainability and the crises in terms of a UK perspective rather than a global and international perspective. So we do have a lot of students coming from across the globe internationally. So yeah, so that does present its challenges, but it also reminds us that it's not just a UK centric issue, that it is a global issue, and that we do need to think about when we're educating staff and students and when we're communicating and we're trying to change other behaviours, that we take that into consideration as well. So yeah, that's something we've been looking at quite closely over the last couple of weeks.
Brilliant. Okay, that's good to hear. So Sarah, you're up next. And the question we have for you, so how can we further develop knowledge, awareness, particularly in our communities? So the RAIN project is centred on 2 specific communities, we know, but how can we develop that knowledge and awareness in our communities around how to understand what is sustainable and can contribute to the environment, whether that is around flooding, whether that's biodiversity, sustainable travel? What have you found to be the sort of best ways of developing that wider knowledge and awareness?
Okay, for us specifically RAIN wise, it's engagement every time, and treating that engagement, tailoring it to who you're actually engaging with. It's not everybody wants to fill out a survey, not everybody wants to go to a community hall, not everybody wants to go to a Teams meeting. So it's about, we've found, because we're engaging with farmers, communities, community groups, schools, they all need a different engagement plan, and our 2 catchments are incredibly different as well, so it's tailoring that engagement to the catchment. We were really lucky to have Tristan, who spoke earlier, who engages with our farmers. The farming community can be, they don't often talk the same language as the council, so to have somebody there to engage specifically with farmers, who is a farmer, we've found that incredibly useful, and it really helpful for RAIN to get our message across, because the farming industry is a massive part of what we're doing, landowners. So that's it, really, just tailor.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think communities respond in different ways, don't they, as you say, in different mediums. But I think that co-design, co-production piece involving communities is essential. Creates that ownership, creates that advocacy of what you're trying to do. So thank you for that. And finally, Jenny and Elizabeth, a few questions, but I'll try and whittle them down, and I'll let you decide how you want to divvy these up between you. Fantastic presentation, by the way. In terms of one of the questions is, what gets the children at Friars energised the most in the work that you've done? You rattled off a broad range of different initiatives there. So what have you found energises them the most? Is it getting their hands dirty, or is that wider educational piece? The sort of follow-up to that is, has any of that rubbed off onto the parents at all? And then I suppose the last one is there anything that you've done that's enabled opportunities for those children to take projects home and implement there, and again create that wider sort of awareness piece and educational piece in the family home? So sort of 3 questions there.
Okay, so some of it is very much what Sarah said. It depends very much on the child. So some of them hate getting their hands dirty initially, and so sometimes it's a really slow process, and so it very much depends, but yeah, sometimes it's getting their hands dirty, but listening to them. I mean, quite often with young people, we're telling them what to do all the time, aren't we? So when you sort of say to them, what do you think, what would you like, and when we said to them, what do you want your school to look like, and they said, we want more flowers, and we put it out to the parents and said, well, your children want more flowers around the school, can you send some bulbs in? And we were having Amazon deliveries to school from parents just who had been online that evening and ordered packs. I think one parent sent in 300 of different bulbs. We just got this massive box of bulbs from a parent who was like, that's amazing, we want to support our children, yes, here you go. And quite often the children, we do recycle those hard to recycle items, and they bring them in from home and say, I told my mum she wasn't allowed to throw this away, so I've brought it in to put it in our box in school. And actually, if half of our children do that with 1 or 2 pieces, that's a big difference across the board. And hopefully other children will start doing that as well. So our children need a lot of support in what they do. So our homework, we don't call it that, but our homework goes home with our young people, and part of our homework is a forest school homework. And so this term's one is go out and build a den in the garden. And so we keep getting photographs of these dens that our young people have gone out with, and they have to do it with their parents, because a lot of our children can't do that on their own. They can't go out on their own. And so they're going out with their parents, they're building dens. Last term's was to make a piece of artwork outside. And so, that is very much engaging the community and that sort of thing. We've got plans for our Christmas fair is going to be outside, and one of the plans we've got a willow that we coppice. And so we're going to cut the willow back and make wreaths, and the children are going to make the wreaths with their parents, and then cut things from the bushes and decorate them. So we're in our real early baby stages, but yeah, it's about listening to the young people and trying to engage. And actually, the parents really do engage very well, and sometimes they will send. I've had a couple of my forms parents message me and say, "Oh, my child has come home and said, you're doing this in school, can we do that at home as well?" So actually, I've said definitely, this is where you can recycle this is where you can recycle this is where you can take this, and if you can't, send it in with them. They're like, oh, okay, thank you. So baby steps, but yeah, they go for it.
No, that's brilliant and incredibly inspiring, and like you say, I think they're quite energizers in the home, aren't they, children? And can shine quite a light on what parents, carers, grandparents aren't doing and perhaps ought to be considering. So
and our children don't shy away from telling you when you're doing something wrong. So I put something in the bin that should have gone in the compost bin, and got quite promptly told off that actually, miss, that needs to go in the composting. Okay, so they're very good at sort of making sure the grown-ups in their lives turn lights off and do the right thing. And that's only going to continue with them as they go out into the wider community.
Absolutely. And Schmores clearly, is a winner whatever age, isn't it, at the end of the day? So
doesn't love a Schmore. Yeah, it's just a shame they come in plastic wrappers.
True.
But we
Brilliant.
recycle
Okay.
those. We do our best. We still recycle them. We still go to
Fantastic.
plastic recycle.
Brilliant. Okay, well that's all we've got time for questions. So thanks, thank you, Peter, Victoria, Sarah, Elizabeth, and Jenny. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to hand back to Councillor Pentland now, who's going to say a few closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. So that wraps up what has been another incredibly informative conference, I thought. And I hope that everybody at home has enjoyed it and found it useful. I certainly have, and it was great to hear what so many different organisations locally, from schools through to businesses, are doing to look after the environment. And I hope it's given you some food for thought, things you can be doing at home as well. As a council, we are really pressing on in terms of doing our bit to tackle climate change, and that will go from strength to strength over the coming weeks, months and years. And I really hope that the local community comes with us on that journey and helps us with that, because we certainly can't do it alone, but we will do our best to do right by the local environment. So just to finish off, really want to reiterate my thanks to everyone who's been involved today, in particular the speakers who've very kindly given up their time and gone through preparation to give you some really fantastic talks. Also want to thank our officers at NNC who've been working really hard behind the scenes to pull this all together for everybody today, and a thank you to you for watching this. And of course, we will, as we said, if there are answers to questions that we couldn't quite get to, we will put those onto the website over the coming days, so that you've got the information there. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day.